Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is my first time in Memphis. I'm very excited. I am of Egyptian origin, so I feel kind of home. But your masjid, congratulations, you have an incredible Islamic center, so mashallah, I am very impressed. Probably I have to say this is the best masjid I've ever visited in America, so congratulations. Let me introduce myself. I am a student of Spanish language. I fell in love with Spanish early on, and my parents are Egyptian, so I recall telling them that I wanted to study Spanish, and they were very disappointed because as a good Egyptian family, you either are a doctor or an engineer or a computer scientist or something of the sort, if you really want to be a doctor. So my mother, until today, she says, my daughter is a doctor, but she's not a real doctor. So I am a real doctor. Maybe I'm not going to save your life, but I'm going to challenge you to think in a different way. The title of my presentation today is Islamic Remanence from Muslim Spain to Colonial Mexico. My research began when I started at UCLA and my advisor wanted me to connect Spanish to Arabic, and I refused. I said, I'm here to study Spanish, I don't want to study Arabic. And then she said, no, I need you to do this linguistic research. Find out what are the words that came from Arabic and were borrowed into Spanish, and then explain why those words specifically came in, how and when, and who. So obviously she threw all these questions at me that became a 22-year research plan in my life. So you can imagine that those questions are still unanswered. And what I'm going to share with you today is just where I am in this research. So I began looking at words and listing, aceitunas, aceite. If you could keep my, if you can keep my slides. Thank you. So I apologize. Yes. Azúcar, almohada, making lists of all the words and how they connect with each other, from clothing, pantalones, camisas, calcetines, calzones, ojalá, inshallah, words like places like Guadalajara, Guadalquivir, Cádiz, Almería, Sevilla, Jaén, Granada, I mean, you name it. Start making lists. Proper names, Fatima, Omar, Alvarez, Luna, Medina, Guzman, all these. So from 2 years of research making lists, one day it hit me and I said, who are those speakers that were bilingual or multilingual and were able to do this language borrowing process? So for me to be able to approach this, I had to be pretty much interdisciplinarian. So my main study is historical linguistics, and my theory that I used for research is the theory of language loss and language preservation. And I don't know if you know, but language and identity come together. So if you preserve your language, you preserve your identity, you lose your language, you lose your identity, and that's a fact. So I wanted to know, if I'm trying to pursue who are those people, and I'm chasing an identity, then I guess I have to chase the language. I never thought I was going to do decolonial studies work. I never thought I was going to study art and architecture. Never imagined that I was going to do linguistic anthropology. Never thought that these fields would come together, even Islamic studies. Never thought all these things would intertwine together and bring all this research. So my research is a combination of all of the above. So my primary work is archival work. I want to thank the previous speakers this morning who laid the ground for my presentation, because they basically touched upon the importance of connecting Muslims telling their stories and decolonizing information. So be it science, history, And again, if any of your children want to study history, today you will probably be inspired to let them study history. My main idea today is I want to invite you to decolonize history through my archival work and deconstruct the narrative that was depicted through the conqueror. Everything we've received in academia has been tainted through a white male, Christian, Eurocentric, in my case, Spanish perspective. So everything I've had, all my readings, my research, everything was tainted by this lens. And the day I began to look at archives, I had to toss that off and rewrite something different based on my findings. I recall one day I was asking at the archives in Mexico City, in the National Archives, the person in charge, and I asked him, does the archive write history or does history write the archive? And I recall it stays with me his statement when he said, el archivo hace la historia y no la historia hace el archivo. So archives make history and not the other way around. The image that today is preserved onto what Muslims look like in culture or pop culture, Spain through Latin America, is this kind of image. Fiestas de moros y cristianos. So moros would be the Muslims, cristianos would be the Christians, and there is a reenactment every year in different towns, different cities all over Latin America and Spain, where they dress up as Muslims and dress up as Christians and reenact battlefields. And of course, we know the ending. Christians win and the Muslims die. So I was very curious why we keep this pop culture today. Why is this part of something that happens on a regular basis? So I had to demystify the history, and these are the very important points I want to leave you with today. Number one is that we had something called a European Islam. It's a fact. Islam was on European soil for about 900 years per official history. So why 900 years? Because Muslims were expelled in the 17th century from Spain. So we know from official history that we have 903 years of Islamic presence in Europe. And when I say Spain, I also don't want you to think it's only Spain. It's Spain and Portugal, because it's the Iberian Peninsula. There's a whole mystifying thing about Spain, but it's really Spain and Portugal. And then there's a whole perception that there's a whole clash of civilizations, that kind of Muslims and Christians is like oil and water and they don't mix, where in fact, they very much mixed. That being Spanish is a homogeneous and synonymous to being Catholic. So if you're Spanish or speak Spanish or Hispanic, then you have to be Catholic, and it's like a synonymous thing. There's also a whole construction on conquest and reconquest. So it seems like history has been given to us that the only thing Muslims do is battle with others. So we're either conquering or getting conquered. And we only meet on the battlefield. And we want to be remembered. We dress up as Muslim or dress up as Christians, and we reenact a battlefield. Very interesting way of presenting Muslims for centuries. I would like for you to reflect on the model of language faith, because that is the model of our Islamic civilization. Language, I told you earlier that language and identity come together. Now I want to tell you that language and faith come together. And the reason why language faith is a model that we study is because the Quran is revealed in the Arabic language. So if the Quran is revealed in Arabic, then there has to be a process of Arabization. You need to be Arabized in any level of Arabization in order for you to access the book, the text, the holy book, so that you could be Islamized, and perhaps you will be Arabized. But if you would like to be Islamized, I want to make a distinction between those two terms, Islamization and Arabization. Islamization is you opting in by saying, oh, I like the values of Islam and I would like to be a Muslim, and I will in the process to access the Quran, I will accept Arabization. There's 4 ways you could be Arabized: either reading, writing, speaking, or understanding. So language comes in all 4 areas. Some people opt in by Arabization in reading, so you can read the Quran, but you don't understand it. Some people read and write. Some people do all 4. If you do all 4, you have become Arabized. If you only do half, reading and writing, you've been I guess it's half Arabization. The point I'm trying to make is that Arabization and Islamization are not the same thing. However, in Europe, it has been understood that Arabization and Islamization are exactly the same thing. And this morning, our speakers talked about how texts were translated from Arabic and were the precursors of the European Renaissance. True in fact. Those texts were Arabized, and then they were Latinized into Latin, and then went into Italy and, the boom of Renaissance. But at some point, and I'm going to show you, there was a whole resistance to anything written in Arabic, be it an Islamic text or non-Islamic text. I also want to show you, lastly, that we have been silenced on purpose. When I say we, I say Muslims were silenced because there was a systemic policy of unnaming. And I'm going to take you down the road of unnaming. If I don't talk about the elephant in the room, then there's no elephant in the room. But if we say we have big ears and a tail and a big body, you could talk about it from different angles and you're talking about the same thing. And I'm going to show you. So I would like for you to reflect on this language faith model because it's going to come up often in this presentation. So again, this is how it looks like. I want you to stick with this image. Battlefield, they only know us. When I say they, it's the fake clash of civilization that was constructed. Last week, I was in Mexico filming a documentary on this topic. And surprisingly, I'm visiting a monastery, and this is what I find inside the monastery. The Mask of Santiago, I find a crown that has the Muslim crown. I find, obviously, Santiago himself, Santiago Matamoros. Santiago is, take this story. Are you ready? Is everybody ready? Is everyone here with me? Yes? Memphis? Yes, thank you. So Santiago is the apostle from Isa alayhi salam's time. So this is Prophet Jesus, one of the companions. His name is Santiago. 1st century. Well, somehow some priest dreams that Santiago in 8th and 9th century comes to him and says, we are going to kill all the Muslims. This is northern Spain. So Santiago helps them on a battlefield, and apparently the image appears, and they find the bones of Santiago. Somehow the bones flew from Palestine to Spain. They find the bones of Santiago, and they built a big church called Santiago de Compostela. Santiago is known in Spain as Matamoros, the killer of Muslims. That's his nickname. But in Peru, his name is Mata Indios. So he kills Indians in Peru, but he kills Muslims in Spain. There is a city in Mexico called Matamoros. Nobody knows that it's called killing Muslims, but that's really what it is. So Santiago is used. I'm going to tell you who Santiago really is. Santiago is the political agenda used to militarize Christian troops for crusaders in the West. So just like all the crusaders went east, we never think about the crusaders who came west. West where? Iberian Peninsula. They had to make sure Muslims are not part of either east or west. So there's just you fighting on both fields. You're on the right and you're on the left. So are you ready? In all the churches, you can find the hero, Santiago, on a white horse. And under his feet, you will see the Muslims. I don't know if you could see from the image the Muslims under Santiago's feet. Do you see the Muslim bodies? There's a sword, there's a horse, the good guys and the bad guys. Well, are you ready? They started something called El Camino de Santiago. Camino de Santiago is like our Hajj to Mecca. Imagine every year marching to Santiago de Compostela. This process took 400 years of marching. Boom, boom, boom. What's the marching for? We hate the Muslims. Yes, we do. What did they do to us? I don't know, but they're bad. Oh yeah, what they do? But we like their towns. Did you see? They're like, also they have palaces, and they're so rich, and they're so advanced, and they've got science. Yeah, but we hate them. Boom, 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 boom. 400 years. What they were doing in those 400 years is everything that we today in America trying to say we are not. Everything post 9/11, Muslims are not this, Muslims are not that. Well, guess what? It's the Camino de Santiago. It all started there. The Islamophobia is not something born now and here. It's a historical concept. It began there. It worked because it was the agenda and the machine to kind of get the territorial, interest that was making sure Europe is protected from expansion of Islam. Let's just call it what it is. The fear of Islam is the fear of Muslims expanding. And why there is a fear? Because Muslims basically covered the entire Iberian Peninsula in 7 years. Only 7 years. It took 400 years to take it out, to take it reconquest back, but it took 7 years to actually have the entire territory. Are you with me on this? Spanish Iberian Peninsula territory with valleys and mountains and rivers. It's not Africa. It's not flat. It's not the desert. It's hard territory to actually take on. But the only way you can understand this is they must have killed everybody. And until today, they're trying to prove that Muslims have massacred all the local population in order to kind of replace them. Where in fact, there's only 3% of the population that were Arabs. So the narrative today in Spain goes like this. Are you ready? Spanish textbooks tell you the story in this fashion. The Arabs came, stayed for 800 years, got tired, and left. That's the story in one paragraph. People who speak Spanish today understand Muslim Spain history in one paragraph. But those Muslims, they were kind of nice. They left some buildings and stuff behind. They didn't just take the buildings with them. They just left some stuff, but they packed the bags after 800 years. I guess they got bored and took off. Beautiful way of kind of diminishing the value of all of this, not to Spain, but to Europe. So this is me here in the museum. I was filming with an artist. She actually does el baile de moros y cristianos. So she does the dance. She has all the costumes. She made me dress up as, she was the Cristiana and I was the Mora, so I was the Muslim. And then here's a mask. And inshallah, you invite me to present my documentary here in Memphis, inshallah. So I want to show you, this. The fall of Granada in 1492 was really the end or the closure of the European Islamic concept, right? So this is when you can say the beginning of modernity and the end of medieval times. The dark ages are done and modernization is about to hit, right? So 1492 is the most important year in history, in European history. This is the year Granada was taken. This is the year the Jews were expelled from Spain. This is the year that Columbus sailed to America. Wow, so this is an incredible year in history. The discovery of America, the so-called discovery, then the expulsion of the Jews, because, Isabel, I don't know if you could see, but Isabel right here on a white horse. Ha ha ha. Now you know why a white horse, everybody? Why do we have a white horse? Anybody? Yes? What is it? Santiago, yes, it's the capital of Chile too. You know Santiago, Chile? All right, so we have the white horse, we have Fernando right here, but do you see this side? Do you see the line on the ground? Do you see how here we have a tree and prosperity, and over here it's dry, and there's nothing? Do you see the people in the back? Do you see the black horse? Do you see the righteous and the lefty? I happen to be lefty, so can you imagine? The left is the devil of the portrait. Whoa, wow. So I'm going to take you back to here. I don't know if you can notice the mask in my hand. Do you see the mask? In my hand, I have a mask, half Muslim, half devil. The Muslim is represented as half human, half devil in the dance today. Today. This is not history, this is contemporary time. So, on this side, we have the conquered side, right? The last prince, the last Muslim prince of Granada. Whoa, the sad story where Muslims, we sit down and cry, oh my God, we lost Al-Andalus. Woe to us for being divided and not being good Muslims, and we lost something amazing, and oh, we have to be sad about this. And then we have the conqueror, who's writing the story and telling us everything about the story, because we are not interested. Once we close the chapter of Al-Andalus, we don't want to talk about it because it's painful, because it's sad, and I guess we don't do that. As a community, as Muslims, and us, we don't like history. Do you guys remember from the beginning? We don't really care about history too much. So it's okay, we leave others to write our history, and we're cool. We're good, right? We're okay? They can tell us who we are, right? Because we can't tell anyone who we are. We don't have this power. We can tell you who we are, but we will tell you what we are not. We're really good at telling you we are not the bad guys. Why do we have to defend ourselves? Why do we have to sit in a position of victimized? Maybe because we were colonized? We need to decolonize our brains. We are colonized. We have been manipulated in this low self-esteem position. As Muslims, we have to admit we have low self-esteem, because no one would talk to you and tell you, I am not this, unless they have a low self-esteem. If you're actually what you say you are, you don't need to say anything, because it's obvious. But if you have low self-esteem, you're going to be like, you know, I am not this. I'm not the bad guy in the story. Maybe I'm the good guy in this. Why do we have to play the good, the bad, and the ugly? Is really everything black and white? Is there some place in the middle? And is history about who won what battle in which year? Is this really what history is all about? Or is it the history of the people, you and I, the human beings, our lives? How do we live? How do we manage this new identity? How do we live in this place? If the politicians leave, if the politicians are cowards, if they're sellouts, if they're bad guys in the story, does this mean everybody in the story is also a sellout? Is it really that? Is this as simple as that? So, up until this time, we have the Al-Andalus concept, and it got replaced by España. And España just means the land of rabbits. That's what it means. And in the Christian Chronicles, they describe Muslims as people who breed like rabbits. They have too many kids like rabbits. And España means the land of rabbits. Explain that to me? I don't understand it. Okay, so Isabel and Fernando, you know, Fernando was kind of marrying up. You know, he had this little Aragon, and you know, Isabel she inherited the crown of Castilla, the big empire. So, you know, he kind of wanted to make this marriage happen. It was very convenient for him. She was 16-year-old, you know, I don't know. Strong 16-year-old Isabella, very famous. And she tells him, I want my wedding in Alhambra, in Granada. And he's like, listen, lady, we're not going to make this happen because we have a treaty with the Muslims. We're in peace right now. We're not going to take over their palace. She's like, no palace, no wedding. It's your call. So here we go. Fernando budges and says, let's do it. Let's take on this, you know, Granada and make it, like, let's close this chapter of Islam in Europe. Let's just call it a day. So here's what it is. There's a new concept transformation agenda. And the transformation agenda looks like this. We only have one faith in this land. Everybody has to be Catholic. We only have one language. So Spain today, they speak 7 languages. You know, Castellano, Aragonés, Leonés, Asturiano, Catalan, Vasco. All these languages have to bend over to Castilla because you know why? Isabel, the big empire, her, right? So she mandates her language. Remember I told you language identity, language faith, language, everything, right? So she imposes her language because Aragon, they were speaking in Catalan. Why they don't speak Catalan if Fernando is the king? Well, guess what? I told you who was benefiting from this marriage, right? Anyways, they started something called limpieza de sangre. Limpieza de sangre means you have to prove that for 3 generations you don't have any Muslim or Jewish blood in you. Well, how do you prove that? You buy a certificate from the church. So money buys titles? Yeah. Use your money to buy your clean blood. So ethnic cleanse or clean concept or white supremacy or whatever you want to call it is also born there. There's only one identity on this that's allowed. So if you were a Muslim, you have a new name now called Morisco. And if you were a Jew, your new name is Converso. So now they united, the marriage, happy ever after, Spain is united, the marriage happened, we're in a new world, post 1492. Yeah, is everybody with me? All right. So what happens next? You guys any ideas of what happens next? 1490, so now we are in a time, I don't know what happened to my clicker, 1 second. Okay, so I'm gonna take you on a timeline. I need everybody's concentration. There's a lot of information, but I have full faith in my audience today, especially the young people. Are you with me? Okay, so I told you we are mapping Spanish Muslims, but we're also looking at Arabization and Islamization, and they're not the same thing. Yes? They're not the same thing? They're not, because we have Arabs that are Christians or Arab that are Jews, right? But we have Muslims who are not Arabs. Yes? So it's not synonymous, right? We're educated about this. We are educated? We know this? We know this? Yes? Perfect. Okay. So, political control, Muslims arrive in Spain in the year 711. Not Arabs, Muslims. Because they were, some of them, Berbers from North Africa. They were not Arabs. A lot of them were Berbers, actually. Arabs were very few percentage of who arrived in Spain. So, los árabes llegaron y los árabes se fueron is a myth. That they came and left, that's just an absolute myth, okay? 7-Eleven, like the store, everybody knows 7-Eleven? So you won't forget this date, yes? Okay, well, they kind of stay on vacation for, I told you how long? Until 1492. How many years is that? 781 to be precise, to be exact. Are you with me? Okay, that's the vacation time. Then that's the before packing their bags and, you know, getting tired and leaving. Okay. Well, according to the official accounts, Muslims were expelled between 1609 and 1614. They call it la expulsión de los moriscos. Many, many years of expulsions from different parts of Spain. How many more years is that to the official story? An extra 122 years. What's the total number we have right now? We're looking at 903 years of Spanish Muslims. According to who? Official time. Yes? Sorry. So we have in that time, which is the 122 years extra, the conquest of Mexico in 1521. Whoa. At the same time, we also have something called the Spanish Inquisition, right? Spanish Inquisition begins in Mexico, 1570, and it ends in 1824. I don't know if you know what a Spanish Inquisition is. The word Inquisition is actually really nice. Our speaker this morning, Dr. Nuh, was talking about how the Quran invites us to ask questions and to be inquisitive and do research and learn and use our brains. Fantastic. Inquisition sounds really cute, but it's not really that cute. Inquisition is asking questions about how true is your heart and your faith in Catholicism. Like, so if you're a Catholic, is your heart pure? Wait, how are you going to know if somebody's heart is pure? Well, you're going to ask the questions. And when you ask questions, what happens? You're going to know if they are true believers. Well, guess what? If there are questions and there are torture devices involved, anybody's going to confess anything under torture. If you ask me to confess that I'm a bird, I will tell you I'm a bird and here are my wings. Just get me out of a torture device. Here's what it is. Inquisition was only interested in wealth transfer. The richer you are, the more interesting of a candidate you became to the Inquisition. Why? Because if a person is on a torture device and dies, because according to Christianity, thou shalt not kill. So you can't just kill people. But if you do torture, they slowly die on the device. So there is somehow a Christian justification, theologically speaking, behind this concept. But anyways, let's not get there. But if the person dies, the church inherits their estate. That means they take on their land, their business, their home, everything. So this was like the slow transfer of wealth. So they come and ask questions. I'm going to talk to you about the Spanish Inquisition in Spain. I'm going to talk to you about the Spanish Inquisition in New Spain. Bear with me. I just want to tell you, and I want you to remember those dates. Inquisition lasted in Spain 354 years. Can you repeat with me? 354 years. How many centuries is that? Okay, what do you think the Inquisition is doing? De-Arabization or de-Islamization? Think again. Is the Inquisition de-Arabizing or de-Islamizing? Or both? Well, let's check it out. In Mexico, they were doing it for 250 years. And in Spain, they were doing it for 354 years only. Only, okay? So let's check it out. De-Arabization and de-Islamization. So again, we're back in the same timeline. It took 781 years to Arabize and Islamize. And it took 354 years to de-Arabize and de-Islamize. So here's the Spanish Inquisition starting. Those 903 years were not an easy, like a piece of meat to chew on. It took a long time to undo the work. Because, hey, the Inquisition followed people to Mexico. Whoa, did Muslims go to Mexico? And it ended with the Mexican independence, but it also ended because Spain abolished the Inquisition. They just, 1800s, Napoleon's soldiers arrive in Madrid. They find the torture devices. They tell the whole European nations, look at this scandal in Spain. Oh my God, human beings on torture devices in the 19th century. Whoa! And Spain says, it's not true. It actually says it's not true. We're going to abolish this Inquisition to prove that we don't do this business. So the only reason the Spanish Inquisition was abolished, we would have it today, but the only reason why it was abolished is because their image before Europe had to look good, and so therefore, toss it. So thanks to French soldiers and Napoleon, we don't have an Inquisition today. So yes, all these years. The Spanish Inquisition, as you could see, would have, the Grand Inquisitor would have the two people, like I have in this painting, the two people that are, going to be questioned. And whoa, I had to find those people. That's my job. I'm taking you on this journey to tell you that I'm trying to find those Muslims. Is my time up? 5 minutes? Okay. I'm trying to find those Muslims in the archives. You remember that this is my original quest? Yes? Well, I need to find them. And so I'm not sure how, in the midst of all this Islamophobia machine and all these years, and it's called actually in Spanish, Santo Oficio de la Inquisición. It's Santo. It's holy office. I think it's holy. I don't know what's holy in this, but I had to dig in this. All right. So we have several narrations here. One is that, the Muslims did not like the situation because oppression was, rising, and so they decided to leave voluntarily or be exiled or deported, and we know that they were expelled 1609, 1614, but there's a problem to the expulsion. We have several, alhamdulillah, we have the brothers in the room, so I don't know if I'm going to ask you guys this question. How would you feel if somebody were to tell you, okay, it's time for you to pack your bag and go, but you're going to leave your mom, your sister, your daughter, all the females and all your children, you're going to leave them and you're going to go alone. How likely are you going to leave? Women and children are not allowed to leave. We're not allowed. Unlike the Jewish expulsion where the entire families left, Muslims had to leave women and children behind. So I don't know how many Muslim men would be able to do that. So if you ask me, this entire expulsion is a showcase for Europe. It's a fake facade that, look at us, no more Muslims, they're gone. It's part of the story. And guess what? They are gone because we don't talk about them, because we don't know anything about them. So therefore, their silence equals they're gone. And here I am trying to find them. So here are the women and children, and here are the men pleading in sujood position, if you can imagine how humiliating it is. Well, I put a timer. I guess it's time for me to stop. So I'm going to stop with this slide. Right here, I have a lot more, as you can imagine, a lot more to the story, but I'm going to just recap what I just said. The birth of a nation, I like this wheel, they call it la rueda de la fortuna, no? So the wheel of fortune, where every nation starts in a birth position and then rises and reaches its peak, then declines, and then disappears. But here we have another chapter called the Americas. So what I want to leave you with is that this Muslim experience in the Iberian Peninsula took a full-on ride, and it's pretty extensive chapter in Europe. How old is this nation that we're standing on right now? And how old is this presence of Muslims in Europe? Just compare the chunks, but if we reduce it to a paragraph, then maybe we think it's nothing. But if we look at it in its real extent of how long it took, maybe we can actually see it in a different lens. I don't want to take more time. I hope I get like an extension because I didn't show you my documents yet. and I didn't show you my research team or my documentary team. So I would like to show you those if I get I don't know if they're going to be generous to give me some more time. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.